we're going to make no-knead beer bread. For all of you who don't have one of these KitchenAid mixers or a bread machine, this is the super easy way to make bread. And it's simple dry ingredients with wet ingredients. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to bloom our yeast. Yeast is the active ingredient that changes the flour into bread. All of them little yeasty molecules attack the gluten, turn it into sugar, and create carbon dioxide. So if they don't work, your bread is bad bread. The first thing we need is for beer bread is beer. And we're going to start with Miller Lite. Now this is all room temperature. Yeast hates hot and it hates cold. So in order to bloom your yeast, everything needs to be room temperature for our best results. And on our second beer bread, we're going to use Corona for all of you who need a lime. And for all of you who are hoppy and dark beers, we're going to try some with black and tan. Oh, look at that. That is going to make some fabulous bread. And now the head's mostly gone down on this one. We're going to add our rapid rise yeast. Pour in there, give it a little stir. And what you're going to be looking for in a couple of minutes is nice foamy. And once again, in our next one, got a little deeper. There we go. Stirring our little yeast over there. Now you never, ever, ever, ever want to add sugar with your yeast because the sugar will compete with that yeast molecule for the glutens and it won't rise. And you'll get some really strange bread. Here we go. The black and tan. This one may be a little difficult because it's got a big head on it still. All right. Now, while they do their magic, we are going to start with the second ingredient, which is flour. I have wheat flour, bread flour, and all-purpose flour, just so you can see the difference. Everybody recommends bread flour for its high gluten content, and I've been wanting to see what the difference between bread flour, all-purpose, and straight wheat is. So we're going to make approximately the same in each one of these types of breads. And the recipe is really difficult. You might want to have to write this down. 3 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, a beer, and a package of yeast. Now you don't have to be super precise because this recipe is super forgiving. 2, 3. If you can count to 3, you can make bread. There's the wheat flour. Next, we're going to do the bread flour. Once again, 1, 2, 3. Now you can see the difference between the wheat and the bread flour. The wheat flour is coarser and darker, and the bread flour looks smoother. And now we're going to go over here to our old friend AP. Now you see that? That is blooming. You see all those bubbles in there? That means that yeast is active. So we're going to get good rise on our breads. And once again, it's one, two, three. And now to each one, depending on how much you want to enhance the flavor, a teaspoon of regular old everyday table salt. Do not use coarse granulated kosher salt because that will not dissolve and mix in well. You can use this later on top for a tasty edge, and we'll be showing you that. Like I said, 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, 3. All right. Now, before you add your yeast, mix your dry ingredients. It's the old wet-dry method. You mix all your dry ingredients together, you mix all your wet ingredients together. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but the bread flour and the all-purpose are different colors and different textures. Going to be interesting to see what happens. All right, we're going to add our yeast with our beer. And this is the hardest part of making beer bread, not drinking the beer. And you just want to get it so it's uniformly mixed and kind of doughy. Oh, look at that beautiful brown color coming out of that beer. And don't be afraid to add a little more water, a little more beer, a little more flour to get it to the right consistency. Here we go, here's the hard part. And guess what? We're done. Now, over here, if you've noticed, we didn't have the same amount of volume of liquid. I may have to open another beer and add it to it because I don't think that's going to be enough liquid. Yeah, you see it's not quite enough. I'm gonna go see if we have another beer in our refrigerator. And it just so happens we had some Miller Lite. And I'm thinking about half. Getting closer, maybe just a little more liquid. Oh, there we go. And here our last one, which is our wheat flour. And you can see that we have active yeast here too. Always bloom your yeast. Because who wants to work for all this and get unleavened bread? There we go. You've done the hardest part of making beer bread. Now all you do is take it, cover it for 8 to 18 hours until it doubles in size. Then you knead it, roll it into a ball once, let it sit for another hour, and bake it. All right, for all of you, we're back with Baking with Brad. Here is some of our homemade lactose-free butter. I always like to butter my pans because I like that brown and the flavor that the butter gives rather than just a oil. And you got to remember, butter the whole pan. I also like to add, for good release, some cornmeal. This adds a little texture to the outside of the bread, but also gives you a nice release. It's kind of like flouring your pan when you're doing baking. And then, guess which bread that is? I think this is the all-purpose flour, and all you do is roll it out, and drop it into your bread pan. Now, if you want to give it a little extra brown on top, a little egg wash, now you can do anything to your breads. This recipe is a basic recipe. And again, guess which one that is? I'd have all you viewers come in and vote to see which bread is the best. Okay, we buttered the pan. We're gonna, almost forgot the cornmeal. Did you see that? Cornmeal around. Just comes right out, flows right into that pan. And this one we're going to make butter top bread rather than egg wash. And if you want to enhance the flavor, just a little kosher salt sprinkled on top. All right, we're going to give it a minute, then we're going to pop it in our oven at 375 degrees for 30 to 45 minutes till they're risen and brown.